Yo, hello. We're also going to be ripping off the band-aid, doing the good old Pokemon VGC tier list. And to see some of our thoughts on the general metagame after like this first week of play. I felt like this was a good follow-up to like the metagame Monday and to try to quantify my thoughts, because why not, you know, and have it in a little video recording. But yeah, we'll get right to it. I already kind of reduced some of the Pokemon that I thought were this like rather bad kind of outclass. Greedent's kind of Snorlax minus, you know, it's kind of above. And then there's a lot of banned Pokemon like this completely not worth using. Like there's no real reason to ever play Alomomola. And there's no real reason to play the Crab anymore either because of there's a lot of better ice types. But the rest doesn't necessarily mean these Pokemon are better than those, but more so I think there's at least something these Pokemon have that are at least like worth talking about. And the first Pokemon we're going to talk about is Chansey, because we might as well, But the thing about Chansey is never like a bad Pokemon per se, because it always just has a great utility, great Spadef bulk, and we're in a very especially heavy meta. If you look at like a lot of the top Pokemon right now, Golden Go, you look at your Hydreigons, those are all special attackers. And then you look at like Armored as well, more special attackers, and Chansey this kind of walls them. So that instantly makes Chansey at least like somewhat playable. Though of course there's a big opportunity cost of this running Chansey in general that's always just going to be very high in VGC because it just doesn't really do anything on the field. If this quick like Helping Hand, you can have it like Life Dew, have it Heal Pulse, use all these supportive moves. But it's not able to like redirect targets like a lot of the better defensive Pokemon can. And it's not really able to disrupt as well as you might want. It does have Icy Wind, but in general it's just not as good of a Pokemon anymore. Thunder Wave and all these support moves. It's like it's the definition of like this an average kind of normal tank. And really the main thing is this why its playability is really this dropped a lot is there isn't really a good guard split mod. And DD is not particularly great at guard splitting for it, and it just doesn't have Shuckle. This loss of Shuckle alone has like really kind of worsened Chansey, and this made it nigh unusable, but just being a normal type alone puts Chansey in like the rather bad or to like the has a niche, because technically that's a fat normal type that you just can't kill and it's going to spam Thunder Wave on your whole team and you probably can't do anything about it. So it's definitely still a playable Pokemon just by the sake of being a complete special wall and just doing nothing on the field for a few turns. And here's a more interesting one. We have Jumpoff. Jumpoff is usually like a pretty bad Pokemon, but thanks to like its pure supportive moveset, it can always have like some kind of general uses and make it somewhat usable, right? Because this supportive moveset is like really good for it. You have Rage Powder, you have this very fast Sleep Powder, very fast Encore, you got Helping Hand too. Like those are all things that make Jumpoff have like a decent niche. But that said, I think this metagame is particularly problematic because for one, you got Prankster Murkrow, and Prankster Murkrow basically this makes all your stuff that's generally like this gonna go way faster, right? And it can set Tailwind, it can do Taunt, and make all this stuff faster than Jumpoff. Because when Jumpoff is at its best is really when it's just able to be faster than everything on the field. And it can with Chlorophyll, but its identity doesn't really match the style of Torkoal, because Torkoal is so slow and kind of wants to be on Trick Room, or kind of wants to have like Lilligant for after you and stuff like that. Jumpoff is just like too fast for it, so Jumpoff is just not going to be a viable Pokemon until we get Groudon again. Once we get Groudon, Jumpoff instantly the skyrockets and it becomes very playable, but for now I just have to unfortunately put it into the rather bad tier. That feels a bit bad to put it there. I love Jumpoff. And we'll talk about my personal one of my personal favorite Pokemon this generation, Cloudstar, which I've seen a lot of video of people talking about Cloudstar, but I think ultimately what it does is very similar to like Skeledirge, actually. Very similar to Skeledirge, where you just have very high defense stats, and you kind of don't really have the most offensive pressure, but of course Skeledirge actually has like real presence because of Torch Song. Cloudstar on the other hand really does not. You have to play like full commit to the stalling out. Just play slow, you can set Toxic, you can go Stockpile. This has to play this very slow game that is just not necessarily really great for it, but at least it's something it can do, right? It is something it can do. And the other option, you have moves like Haze, you have moves like Helping Hand. Like, it's not lacking in support options for a team. This really doesn't have much presence to it, which makes it, of course, very limited. But it at least has like these small support moves. You can go like full bulk too. And it becomes very hard to actually take down a Cloudstar. Of course, this typing is a bit rough, but there's not too many things that will hit it too hard. So it's like, it's still... It's at least here. It's at least in the rather bad but outclassed tier. Also, I didn't mean to put Tauros there. But yeah, let's see. And then we'll talk about our new Psychic Pokemon. And this is another Pokemon that's like kind of interesting, right? Because it has the ability Speed Boost. And that alone makes it kind of unique. Esperotha. You also have Opportunist, but I don't think Opportunist is really that great. But the ability that I do think is like, though it can be a funny little mini check to Dondozo, right? If a Dondozo comes in, you just have Opportunist. You're just getting +2 and everything, and that's pretty good. But in general, it's not going to be used for that, really. I think the more interesting strats to it involve like Stored Power, Calm Mind. You're getting a +1 boost every turn, and you get the plus into special attacks but death as well every turn. And you slowly can just like set up to start like actually this popping off, you know? And that makes Esperotha like a very scary kind of setup Pokemon. And one of the better users of like Stored Power, Calm Mind. Unfortunately for it, there isn't really a good terrain setter, so it can't really use this to its best ability yet either. But when, let's say, Tapu Koko comes around, that's when you can really start seeing Stored Power Seed really just pop off as a set. Though for now, it'll be a bit limited. Because like this set is actually like very powerful. Because it can really just you get a +1 defense boost instantly, and then you just start saying Calm Minds, and then you just start going for Stored Power for a game. And for any dark types that come into you, you can use Terra Blast Fighting to have a check to those dark types, and it becomes like a very solid Pokemon. Unfortunately, there isn't really a good Electric Surge setter. Pincurchin is not the most viable Pokemon for it. But even with that, there's another set to its Esperotha that's actually like very interesting too. Because of its speed boost and its sash, and it actually has a very cool exclusive move in Lumina Crash. What Lumina Crash does is essentially fake tears, but on an 80 base power move. Like we've seen this with Acid Spray, for example, but Acid Spray is very, very weak, right? You only have a 40 base power. Esperotha is just double that, so you're really able to just pop off a lot more. And you also have the power of like these supportive moves with Hypnosis, Helping Hand, Ally Switch, so it's able to get like some value off of its turns, making it at least like a slightly viable Pokemon, in my opinion. As it can easily just like start this being generally very annoying. And you can still just run Terra Blast Fighting as well as a way to hit dark types. It's this in general a very scary Pokemon. Lumina Crash was a strong special attacker. But let's say you have it with Golden Go, right? You can have its Esperotha this go faster than the Golden Go, use Lumina Crash for it, and then you just make it rain. And that's going to kill like basically any Pokemon your opponent may have. And if that doesn't work, you also have the ability to just YOLO out a Hypnosis and try to make something happen. So I think Esperotha is more close to this like mid and decent. It does still have the flaw of it's not very bulky. It's probably going to die very quickly. If it needs Protect for a turn of Speed Boost to really start going. And those are like problems that will exist and stop Esperotha from being like too powerful. Though it's at minimum a Pokemon that I think has like some use case that will keep it at least being kind of decent. And the next Pokemon we're going to talk about is this little doodle guy. Good old Graphia. And Graphia has Prankster. And that instantly makes it like a little bit better. Because you have all these like decent support moves. Notably its new ability in Doodle, where it can user and its ally copy a target's ability, which you can copy stuff like Intimidate and go like actually crazy with it. And you actually have Parting Shot too. So it has some decent utility moves to it. But I think like there's some significant problems with this playstyle. And that's just notably the stats. Like 95, 110, these are all kind of respectable. But it doesn't even get like Thunder Wave, it just gets Helping Hand, but I feel like Graphia is just an example of a Pokemon that has stuff, but doesn't really have enough to really like push it to the next level. And it doesn't help that Graphia has like very good competition in Grimmsnarl. That makes it a lot harder to run. And that very strong competition in these other Prankster Pokemon, like even Klefki I feel is a better Prankster Pokemon than it, and Murkrow of course as well. All these Pokemon handle Prankster a little bit better than Graphia, so I have to kind of just put it into rather bad / outclass tiered. It is definitely kind of belongs there. And the next Pokemon we're going to talk about is Ratska. Ratska is another Pokemon from this new generation that I think is like very unique in how it plays. Because Ratska has actually access to a new move in Revival's Blessing. And it's most notably a Pokemon that's actually like significantly bulky with Revival Blessing too. So it's like not a horrible Pokemon. Just off of that, like having the ability to revive a Trick Room Pokemon for you. Let's say, since you're using Trick Room, you might be using like this Annihilate set where you can just like Choice Scarf, Final Gambit, and you just Suicide turn 1. Though thanks to Ratska's ability in Revival Blessing, it makes suiciding a little less bad. Because the Final Gambit can just go into a Pokemon, take it out, you guarantee your Trick Room setup a little bit more, and then you can have the Trick Room go up, use a Revival Blessing, and then you can really pop off with it. And that's not like a bad use case at all. It is unique enough where I feel like it's at least a usable Pokemon. And you can also start using like a Struggle Bug to be mildly inconvenient. You do not have access to Helping Hand. You have Memento, so you can sack yourself too to get more momentum. That's kind of interesting. In general, it doesn't have like the greatest move pool ever. You have Bug Bite to get rid of berries. You have Mud Shot for self procs, Mud Slap. The move pool really isn't that great, honestly. It does have Sunny Day for self setup, I guess. But I imagine that something like this would be better, and you can just go Protect, and you can run like a Colbur Berry to resist Hydreigon. Let's go like full bulk. I think this would probably be like a decent idea with it. Unfortunately, the defensive typing isn't really great either. But you can go Terra Water to make up for it. You can go like Aqua Berry too. You are also weak to Fake Out Pressure, and you have to deal with it that way. But in general, if you're able to Revival Blessing a very powerful Pokemon with you, and something that like will Suicide, for example, like another thing, because it has Telepathy, it can actually synergize well with Explosion. Though there isn't really a good Explosion user in this generation for it either. Like if there's some Valley, for example, that would be a little bit better. But overall, it's like, this is not quite enough for this Pokemon to be decent. Though it has at least like some application. It has some application. But yeah, I think Ratska is a Pokemon that we can easily just put in. It has a niche. It has a niche. Revival Blessing is pretty good. Now we on to Gyarados. Gyarados is actually a very strong Pokemon. Thanks to Waterfall, Terra Blast, Intimidate, and you can actually take advantage of the new item Clear Amulet, making it set up a lot harder to actually get through. Gyarados easily solid tier. Easily solid. Intimidate is a bit worse off this generation, but that's kind of okay. And there's Slowking. Slowking actually has access to a new move, Chilling Reception. Chilly Reception. And I do actually think that's a really good move on a Trick Room Pokemon. Because typically a problem you have with how Trick Room wants to play is Trick Room typically, you want your Trick Room setter to get out because your Trick Room setter is going to be like so bulky and not able to put on much like general pressure. So this having the ability to switch your Trick Room setter out and actually get your sweepers in faster and for free is like generally pretty good. And also the extra bonus of like Chilly Reception is it can potentially like set up a Cetitan for like Slush Rush outside of Trick Room. So it can actually theoretically add a different mode for when you're outside of Trick Room, or adjust your speed tiering within Trick Room. And I think that's like a practical use case of it as well. Though I also like it because like you can Chilling Reception next to like a Torkoal. And even though you would lose Sun, it would be a way to disable Rain or disable any other weather that might be annoying. Like let's say a Tyranitar tries to come in with like Sand. then you can put up the hail. It will lose its Spadef boost, and you'll be able to do more damage that way. So even though it is a bit anti-synergy to quicken next to Torkoal, in niche cases with like Rain Dance existing and all that, it actually becomes like somewhat okay. So yeah, Slowking, while not the greatest Trick Room Pokemon, is a Pokemon I think is like definitely has a niche and goes like the mid-decent tier. That's off of that niche. And the next Pokemon we talk about is Fire Tauros. Fire Tauros I actually think is a good Pokemon. Fire Fighting is a remarkably good defensive typing, for the simple reason of like Hydreigon's very powerful right now. You see a lot of dark types that are trying to like actually get play right now as well. Tyranitar, there's Golden Go. Golden Go doesn't like Tauros Fire either. And I think that makes Tauros as a fire fighting type pretty good. And Arcanine also competes with it as well, but Tauros has the unique case of this better speed, better bulk, some interesting coverage as well. Like there's a fair bit to Tauros that I think actually makes it kind of useful, and the exclusive move Raging Bolt isn't bad either, as you're able to just have it get a fire move and act as a little brick break. So in general, something like this is what you would typically want with this Pokemon, I think, and that makes it like pretty decent. So yeah, Tauros is definitely a Pokemon I would put in a higher tier, especially in the meta right now where Hydreigon is like very popular. I think it deserves to be in like solid. It's a solid enough Pokemon. Vaporeon's an interesting one. Vaporeon is kind of this bulky water with Calm Mind that can kind of just sit on the field for a long time. Or alternatively, you can actually use it with Haze. And that makes it like a fairly decent Pokemon. And it's this outrageously good bulk. But yeah, you can learn one of two sets. You can run bulky Calm Mind with Muddy Water, Ice Beam, Calm Mind, and just stay on the field forever and never die. And this kind of wall stuff. And you can also run Muddy Water with like Icy Wind and Haze, though it's a bit antithetical in some sense. The Haze is more just to deal with like Dondozo and stuff, than instead to deal with like your own Icy Wind drops. So, and there was actually a player who used Vaporeon in this Limitless tournament, I believe. We can try to find them. There it is. So Mythos 13 actually used Vaporeon in this tournament, and they had a set of Muddy Water, Ice Beam, Haze, and they had like Garga, Hydreigon, Sylveon, Mungus Grim, and I think like Vaporeon also cutting a tournament is enough to put it in like, it has a niche. It has a niche for sure. It even goes to mid-decent, because I think bulky waters are like kind of hard to come by at this format. And now Bellybolt. Bellybolt's an interesting Pokemon, 2x charge. We actually had a video where we featured a Bellybolt team, and we would go like Bellybolt puts Bronzong. It would use Convert Cloak, and it would go Terra Ground, so it would be immune to its discharges, and it would set up that way. Unfortunately for Bellybolt, I actually think the best user would have been like Runegrigus to be with it. Mainly because Runegrigus has really great bulk. It's a ghost type, so it's hardest to get around. It has Trick Room, and it would have had Bulldoze too. Also, ignore that it's illegal. It's just not in this generation, so every move would show up as illegal. Well, Runegrigus would have been like the perfect theoretical Pokemon to partner with Bellybolt to proc its own weakness policy and get like discharge, and this be like constantly self-procking and doing more, and it's also way slower too. Like, I think that combination could have been like very interesting if it's there. The Bronzong combination is unfortunately a bit more gimmicky because you have to terrestrialize your Bronzong for the Suicide too, and that makes it like a bit less good, but it's not really outclassed by anything necessarily, so I will put it at like has a niche. Azure Morel is a very good Pokemon. It has like one of two sets that are like fairly okay. You have this pure damage of this going like Assault Vest, Water Fairy, great coverage, great damage. It's just not a bad Pokemon by any means. Like this, and you do like solid damage thanks to huge power, and it doubles your attack. You can also run it with Belly Drum. I do think the Belly Drum set's a bit worse right now because there's a lot of Pokemon that have like the move Extreme Speed, and there's a lot of very strong spread attacks. Like Make It Rain will actually destroy a Azumarill, and E-Speed will completely counter it too. So that makes things a bit more rough for Azumarill than it generally would be. Though Azumarill also has access to potentially really game-changing support Pokemon like Mousehold. Like Friendguard Mousehold is a very great partner for Azumarill. Amoonguss is a very great partner for Azumarill as well with Redirection. Though unfortunately you have to have a great answer to an E-Speed Dragonite. and great answer to like make it rain in order to really have that pop off. But it's definitely a viable Pokemon nonetheless. Move this up. Solid. Yeah, Umbreon. Umbreon's a Pokemon that's generally solid, but I think Umbreon is in a very weird place. It's slow. It'll stall through most of the meta with Snarl. It does decent things with Helping Hand and Foul Play too. Yawn's a strong move. It's just... Umbreon always feels weird to play though, because this doesn't quite do much. But because the meta is like fairly weak, I will have to put Umbreon at a higher tier. That's for the sake of being a bulky dark type that can just stand onto Golden Go and just kind of just stay there. I think it deserves to be at least like fairly high up just for that respect. Scizor is a fairly good Pokemon, I think, because Scizor just has the ability to go like Bullet Punch, Swords Dance. You have like Clear Amulet, you have Choice Band. You can use Terra Water with this, so it's no longer weak to fire. Like, it's in general, it's not a bad Pokemon. It's just kind of a little more awkward to play at times. But yeah, Scizor Technician does a lot of damage, decent priority. Definitely a decent Pokemon. Definitely a decent Pokemon for sure. Kind of a bit underplayed right now, I think, as well. But solid. Miss Magius is basically Gengar, but it actually still has Levitate. And generally worse stats too. Like, you don't have the 130 HP, you have a little more Spadef and all that, but like, those aren't exactly useful, so... It's more this being essentially this play like Gengar. You have all these Gengar-like moves, and you just play like that, and you're like, hey, it's kind of Gengar, it's kind of Gengar-esque, you know? It's kind of a Gengar. It still has Levitate. I love Levitate Gengar, man. So yeah, it's a viable Pokemon. It's a viable Pokemon. Ghost types in general are pretty great. Though I think like Miss Magius, unfortunately, like even with the fact that it has Levitate for like Garchomp, I still probably would put it in Has an Itch, but not great tier. Though it has a decent like support move like Gengar, so I definitely could see someone playing it. Jolteon's kind of weird. It's like the fastest electric type in the format. Doesn't really have great bulk, but this has the ability to go like Life Orb, Volt Absorb. You can run like Terra Ice with it. It's definitely a great Terra Ice candidate. You can do like something like this. This Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, and then Terra Blast. It's a very simple Pokemon. Not really much to talk about it. It's like, it's okay. Despite being a fast electric type, I kind of feel like it deserves to be this here. It's not a great Pokemon, but fast electric does damage. And now we get into a really fun Pokemon, Dragonite. And Dragonite, I think I can leave it very simple. It's going up there. It is going up, dude. It is going up. And for one simple reason, Paranormal Espeed is insane. Like, Dragonite's a Pokemon that forces your opponent to have like multiple ways to answer it. And even if it's not Choice Band, you can also run like Assault Vest too, and that's like a decent set. It can even just has very great moves, but we'll just highlight the main point of it that is most worth talking about. And that's this Paranormal Espeed. And you look at this attack stat, 134, very powerful. The formal best Espeed user was actually Arceus. And, Arceus, while never VGC legal, its E-speeds were always, like, very scary, right? Off of this 120 base attack stat, but Dragonite's base 134. And also immune to Intimidate, so, you know, very good, very powerful. And then we go to Murkrow. Murkrow is really just the easy Tailwind setter. Prankster, you got Taunt, you also have Haze for a lot of the setup strats that have kind of existed. It goes to very good tier. Keep it as simple as that. Murkrow Golden Go is like one of the most popular cores in the meta. If you want like a core to look at it as well, it did end up winning the Limitless tournament, so you know it's easy to just put it this high up. I do think people are kind of overestimating it a bit, because like any counter Tailwind is going to functionally be as very strong into Murkrow, and this it's not going to be like the most insane Pokemon to like Trick Room either, and like solid setup. But this is fedecampo's team. He also has a YouTube channel, his own video on this team if you wanted to hear more about it. But yeah, Murkrow, very good Pokemon, very good Pokemon. And we go to Flamingo. Flamingo is basically a Pokemon that is essentially its existence depends on Pokemon like Dondozo and Suicide strats. But I really don't think it's like particularly good beyond that. Like, I don't think suiciding for a Flamingo is necessarily a great strat, as in, like, it doesn't have great bulk. So even if you get the suicide setup, you're not even, like, guaranteed to win. You don't even always have the highest chance of winning off the suicide strat. And the suicide strats with, like, Toxic Orb Tatsugiri, so that your Tatsugiri will die while in the mouth of Dondozo, take a bit to set up, and, like, the Dondozo could have its stats reduced, the Flamingo could get, like, priority beat by, like, Tailwind. Like, it's not even the fastest Pokemon, so even if you have this at +2, if your opponent has, like, let's say Murkrow, and this hazes it, then it's like, oh, well. And that's something the meta has, like, kind of grown into as well. So I think that's the overprevalence of Haze. Its otherwise horrible stat lining makes Flamingo a bit of a worse Pokemon. Though I do want to point out this Pokemon does have Wide Guard, it does have Tailwind. Like, it still has, like, decent supporting options, so it's still, like, a playable Pokemon, even outside of the Dondozo Tatsugiri modes. But I do have to put in this, like, not a great tier. Pelipper, Rain Setter. Rain is, like, okay. It has Tailwind, it also has Wide Guard. It ends up this going, like, mid-decent to solid. I feel like solid is okay place to put it. It's hard to evaluate Rain in the course of day 1 meta. I do think, like, Pelipper plus Palafin is very scary. Breloom's a Pokemon that deserves a lot of credit always. Because, like, here's the thing. If you are not ready for Breloom and your Pokemon are slower than it, then it can, like, really just take over thanks to its Bullet Punch, Spores, and this be a very annoying Pokemon to deal with. Though Breloom does have, like, one big issue, and that's it's not very fast. And a lot of the Pokemon in this metagame right now that are currently being used are very fast. So it still can answer to, like, Hydreigon with, like, Mach Punch because they're turning Terra Steel right now, but there's some that turn Terra Poison. So yeah, overall I think Breloom is this is solid. This goes, like, solid to mid / decent, really. It's just a decent enough Pokemon. It's not gonna blow away a game. Sableye. I don't like Sableye. Sableye has Prankster, Taunt, Willow, Quash, and all those stuff, but it doesn't really... I never feel like it really does enough to take over a game. So I feel like this putting in niche, but not great tier is accurate for Sableye. Torkoal. Torkoal is always going to be, like, fairly strong. This Drought, you can have it with Lilligant. Though notably, there's a lot of, like, counters to Torkoal right now. So it's hard to really place it exactly. It's hard to really place it exactly, but... we might need to make a new tier for that, actually. Salamence. Salamence is a kind of underrated Pokemon. Because notably, Salamence is actually... let's look at Hydreigon, base 98. Salamence is actually base 100. So, and it's faster, does more damage off physical attack. So you can run Hydreigon in a couple... Salamence in a couple of ways. You can run it like Roaring Moon used to. And there's actually a Terra Steel Terra Raid event that's going on soon that you can kind of get a general idea of. And you can run it like this. And, like, it's kind of okay. It's not the best. It's not the greatest. But you can also run it with this Choice Scarf like you used to in, like, VGC 2014. I feel like a lot of old VGC 2014 strats are kind of coming back up again, which is pretty funny. And you can also just run it as similar to what Mence is to run too. You can run, like, Robinberry, Draco, Fire Blast, Tailwind, Protect. Like, Mence is an okay Pokemon. Intimidate's a little less valuable now, but thanks to its speed stat and its, like, general power, it's hard to say Mence is, like, bad. Wait, where did I put it? Where did I put you, Mr. Mence? Oh, there it is. I put it here. There we go. But yeah, Mence. I'll actually make another tier for this too. Good, but lot of weird interactions. Good but weird. I'll just describe it as that. Like, it's not really mid Pokemon, but it's, like, it's not really solid either. It's kind of this in between where it's, like, decent enough. Breloom also probably deserves to be in good but weird tier. Like, technically, if you don't have a Breloom answer and your team is slower than Breloom, Breloom can just do work and destroy you. And that's like, that's a general thing. But yeah, Staraptor is another Final Gambit mon. But I do think the key with like Staraptor now is that Annihilate exists. And that's kind of rough. Intimidate's a little less good too. Base 85 or use a base 110 that can't get faked out, so you know. I think it's easy to say Staraptor is probably in the rather bad outclassed tier, honestly. Pachirisu, Sejune's Pokemon. There isn't many electric type Pokemon here, but it's still like this a follow me user and, you know, decent supportive moves. I think it just goes to has a niche but not great, or like mid-slash decent. That's like the general area. Out of respect for our Sejune Park, we'll put it here. This because it's one of the few follow me users. But yeah, it's not that great. Gastrodon. I'll say this, Gastrodon is always a lot more viable than people think it is. Gastrodon always has like decent stats. It does just enough to be viable. So I'll put Gastrodon good but weird. It honestly might deserve solid. Like, Gastrodon is always going to do thus enough to have a place. And if water types become more powerful, if like Palafin gets more use, then I feel like Gastrodon's better too. And also this has like decent matchups versus Golden Ghost stuff, being a ground type. Decent matchup versus Hydreigon thanks to its just general bulk and ability to use like Earth Power, Ice, to use like Ice Beam. It kind of be annoying that way. Like, Gastrodon's just generally a decent Pokemon, and that has not changed. Honchkrow, super luck plus crit moves, but it's a little too slow. 71 speed is not great. It has Tailwind. It does have crits moves, but it's just going to be rather bad outclassed. There's not much to say. Garchomp, though. Garchomp, well, let's look at this tournament real quick. Garchomps, Chompers, Big Chomps. Like, Chomp is just a really good Pokemon. Chomp is just a really good Pokemon. There's not... It can run it so many ways, too. 102 speed is just perfect. Terra Ground, you can run like Clear Amulet, you can run Life Orb. And really the thing with Garchomp, you can also run Choice Scarf too, which I think is an underplayed set. Like, all these moves are like very good. You have to decide which move to drop though, which is always like the question of Garchomp for Protect. Though you can also just run like Choice Scarf. That's a good Pokemon. I think it's really like the premier Pokemon in the metagame right now. I really do think it's like the GOAT, the legend, one of the best Pokemon you could possibly use. And that's something that's gonna like pick it up for a while. But yeah, I have Garchomp pretty high. I think Garchomp probably is the Pokemon that deserves GOAT tier. Like, no matter what matchup Garchomp is, Garchomp can always find a way to do work in this metagame. So I think it's really the most easy Pokemon to put in GOAT tier. Avalugg, Iron Defense Body Press. That's what it does. Cool. Lucario. Lucario is another Pokemon that's normally like a Final Gambit Pokemon. But, it lost Follow Me a while ago. And that's bad. It's not, and its HP stats pretty bad for Final Gambit too. It's just not a great Pokemon, man. It's just not great. 90 speed's like okay. It's fighting type. I'll put it in has an itch but not great tier. It's still just a fighting type. Fighting types are kind of hard to come by that are decent in this metagame, so doesn't being a fighting type alone are like I'll have is just like enough to put it there. Florges, bulky fairy type, which Florges is interesting for sure. As you can see, there's not many particularly great fairies in this meta. So like having this a bulky one that does nothing for a few turns, has great special bulk, Calm Minds, like it's okay. It's still gonna be at like the bottom tiers though. Rather bad. And we have Hippowdon. Hippowdon's actually like an okay Pokemon Sand. It plays more a stally game that is like not necessarily like how you want to play VGC. Because like Hippowdon, you kind of you have great bulk. You kind of sit on the field for a long time. If Tyranitar didn't exist, I would like obligatorily put it higher. But in general, like it does stuff. It supports the team. It exists, you know. It's cursed too. It's a defensive setup. Like it's slack off or cut? Oh, I meant slack off. I guess it's okay. This is not bad. It's not really great either, but we'll put it in mid, so it's decent. Let's go, Hippo. Toxicroak, Dry Skin, Fake Out. It's never like, it's not really the worst Pokemon, but it needs like very specific Pokemon to be good, to be great, because it needs like a very high water type meta, and that's just not how the metagame is really played, so it's going to be rather bad. Applin is weird. Oh wait, no. Flapple, Mr. Flapple. Forgot his name for a second, but Flapple, 70 speed, 1 attack. It's with Dragon Dance, Hustle's a little greedy. It's just tough. It can technically set up on you and technically do a lot of damage thanks to Hustle, but this dies and it feels kind of bad, so yeah. Lumineon is another Storm Drain Pokemon that actually has Tailwind. So I'll actually, that's for the sake of it having Tailwind and having Soak and all that, I'll put it in has a niche, but not great tier. It kind of belongs there. Leafeon, fast grass type, but there's better fast grass types in Meowscarada now, so we're just going to leave it here. Physically and specially, it's not even at the best physical grass type anymore, which is extra sad for it. Gallade's an interesting Pokemon for sure, because Gallade actually had a very substantial buff, and now it actually really hurts. Thanks to Sharpness being a 1.5 times boost, you can actually take advantage of these moves like Psycho Cut, like Sacred Sword, Leaf Blade, and be like a very insane Pokemon. It has access to Trick Room too. Like, this is just in general, this a solid Pokemon. It has some priority options, Shadow Sneak, it has Helping Hand. It also is another Pokemon to actually get top cut in this tournament. That's really the only tournament we have, and it also has Will-O-Wisp, you know. But yeah, as I was talking about, I think fighting types are very good in this meta, and it's one of the better ones is for the sake of its pure damage thanks to Sharpness. So it's easily going to go up here. I will put it in good but weird tier, because it does feel a little wonky at times. Like, it's not very fast, though it does also have the ability to play this weird Scope Lens set too that feels okay. You can like Terra Grass for Leaf Blade damage. Like, it's definitely like an okay Pokemon, so we'll have it like decently high up. I do think like fighting types are generally probably going to be good but weird tier, because like this with how good Hydreigon and all these dark types are in this meta, it becomes a lot better. Pavilion is actually a decent Pokemon. Oh, Pavilion has access to Friend Guard, Compound Eyes, you get Sleep Powder, Quiver Dance, Hurricane, Bug Buzz. It can also support a team with like Friend Guard too. It does like this enough to be kind of viable. So we will put Pavilion actually decently high. It's like better, it's probably better than Jumpoff. That's probably where I would put it. It's better than Jumpoff. There you go. And these aren't like particularly ordered, by the way. I'm just going through it as I go. Frostlast. Frostlast really has one thing it does, and that is it has Frost Breath. You quick Frost Breath onto Anger Point Pokemon. Anger Point Pokemon becomes Angie, and then you kill stuff. And notably, Tauros, the best Anger Point Pokemon, did get a lot stronger this generation, so you can run on Paldea Tauros. It's a fire type, and it actually resists it now. So that gimmick strategy is a little bit better, but it's still... Yeah, I'll put it here. It's with this Doodlemon where it's just part of a gimmick, and it's not a very good gimmick, but it exists, and it does that gimmick better than anything possibly could. Honestly, maybe being part of a gimmick is enough to put you into this tier. Yeah, I'll add all the gimmick mons to has a niche, but not great. Better gimmicks will go higher, like Tatsugiri Dundozo deserves higher, for example. The Rotom forms. Okay, this is an interesting run, because the Rotom forms can actually run Terra Blast and turn into the other Rotom typings, which is a very funny tech that you can do. And also, they're good with Choice Specs, they're good with Citrus Berries, they're good playing like Nasty Plot setup, they can Will-O-Wisp for your team. Like, they're this all solid. Like, I'll actually put all the Rotoms very highly this generation, I think. Like, I think Mo is pretty good too, and we get cut all the way up here. With Heat, we put Wash up here. I do think the flying one is still the worst. Even with the ability to change into a different Rotom, it's just very impractical to go flying. There's not much justification on it. And there's honestly even less justification on it now. So yeah, Cut will go up a bit more than normal. That's because it has the ability to terrestrialize into something else, and that's like kind of cute. And it's still a Rotom, so it's like, it's okay. I probably won that one, but you know. Lilligant, the premier chlorophyll user, has Sleep Powder, so it's after you. It is probably also deserves to be in good but weird tier. Cause like it can destroy a game if you're not really prepared for it, but it's also this like not particularly a great Pokemon. Though access to chlorophyll plus Sleep Powder plus after you will at least make it like kind of viable. So you know, good but weird tier. Crocodile. Crocodile is also not a bad Pokemon. Intimidate's a little less valuable this generation though, and it's like ground dark typing is a bit rough at times, and it's also competing with a Pokemon like Garchomp, which makes it a bit tougher to use in general. So I kind of want to put it in mid so it's decent for some reasons, but I feel like good but weird is like a good answer for Crocodile. Like if you ever asked me how like good Crocodile is, good but weird is probably like the perfect descriptor of how Crocodile tends to play. So yeah, that kind of like feels like the most justifiable place. Gothitelle, Shadow Tag, fairly solid. You got Fake Out, you got Helping Hand, you got Ally Switch, you got all these like solid options to it. And if you ever see a playstyle or a trap actually becomes like really good, or someone can like manage around trap pretty well, Gothitelle just deserves to be put in solid for that reason alone. Though it's also probably right now it's actually this in good but weird tier because there's a lot of very good ghost type Pokemon, so Shadow Tag actually becomes a little less viable. And there's like Terrestrial to break Shadow Tag as well. But yeah, good but weird, and it also borderlines kind of solid as well, which isn't too bad. And Amoonguss is really like, even if Amoonguss is bad in some senses, because like there's Go and Go that can like ignore it, there's Murkrow that can like kind of deal with it as well. All Pokemon can kind of handle it a lot better. Amoonguss is always GOAT tier because Amoonguss is just the GOAT in the legend. Haxorus, I don't think Haxorus has like any reason to be played, so I'll just leave it there. Beartic, it's the Titan that's got introduced, and so Titan just does a thing better than it ever could. Bravery is actually like an okay Pokemon, decently bulky. Tailwind, Defiant, but the Defiant's a little less value, and it really does need that Defiant to actually really do damage. But I'll put it in mid/decent tier anyways, because it's like a decent Tailwind user. Hydreigon is a Pokemon that really just started to show off a lot of its potential power in this metagame. And I think that will instantly just put it up. It does have to rely on terrestrializing at times to actually do its job correctly and deal with certain Pokemon. I think like as the meta like develops to counter Hydreigon more and force it to have to terrestrialize in matchups, it becomes a little bit worse. But nonetheless, it is still very good tier. It is still very good tier. Volcarona, I actually think is a fairly strong Pokemon. Has access to Struggle Bug, Rage Powder, Quiver Dance, a lot of very strong support moves. Volcarona even has Tailwind too. So I think Volcarona is actually in the solid tier. And is a Pokemon that I expect to really just pop off more as we get into the weeks and get into farther in the meta. Talonflame. Talonflame's another very fast Tailwind user. Actually threatens a bit more with like the fire typing and can go like quick guard as well to block Fake Out. I do think it probably deserves to be in the same tier as Murkrow, or this like right under it, because like Murkrow definitely has been the premier Tailwind user, and Talonflame kind of is like second. But we will put Talonflame in solid tier at minimum for now. Dragalge, adaptability, very strong damage, has the ability to terrestrialize into other types. But the terrestrial mechanic also has its downsides for Dragalge. So we'll put it in like has a niche, but not great tier. Sylveon. Sylveon's a pretty good Pokemon, fairy typing. I do think Sylveon's always just felt bad ever since the Salamence, Mega Salamence got nerfed. But we'll still put it in solid. It's definitely one of the better fairy types you could possibly use. So we'll just leave it there for now. Hawlucha. There isn't really much reason to run this Pokemon, I think, unfortunately. But it does have Tailwind again, right? It doesn't have Tailwind. Okay, never mind. I'm putting it very low. Okay. Bad Pokemon. Well, why does this not get Tailwind? Oh my god. Goodra, bulky dragon, kind of unique, has Ice Beam, a lot of coverage moves, has access to like Sludge Bomb too. Still it's bulky, it does something. Klefki is actually like an okay Pokemon, Prankster, Thunderwave, and notably Steel typing is actually pretty good for it. because that means you're not going to be weak to Golden Ghost, so you can stay around on the field for a bit more. So I'll actually put it in good but weird tier, because like it's very Grimmsnarl like, where this set screens, it can go like Flash Cannon, you can run with like Metal Sound. It's a bit better with Rain as well. Like Klefki definitely has like places where it's a bit better than Grim, and I think that alone puts it in like good but weird tier. Noivern, fast Tailwind user, has like, I'll actually look, I don't remember. Oh yeah, Telepathy, access to like Boom Burst too, Draco, Hurricane, and Tailwind. It's like, this is fast Tailwind user, low special attack stat, not the greatest, not the worst. I'll probably put it in actually this not great. It's just not great, but at least it's fast Tailwind. Dancer, this is another gimmick strategy where you can essentially win Oricorio plus Volcarona, get Quiver Dance, go for Dancer. You can kind of pop off in that sense. And also there's an interesting thing with Oricorio and Terrassalization. Because of how its main move, Revelation Dance, works, if you Terrassalize into like, let's say, Dragon, then your Revelation Dance will become a Dragon move, and that's pretty cool. And you also have the ability to run like Volcarona as well with it, and that's like not too bad, not too bad. And I think that's like in general, like Volcarona plus Quiver on it is like pretty good. But it is still this is a very gimmicky strategy, so I'll just leave it here with our other gimmicks. Lycanroc, actually pretty powerful. Sand Rush, decent stats. Unlike the other Lycanroc forms, this one actually does kind of hurt. So it's not really like outclassed necessarily, it's just a very powerful Rock Slide user. Though I don't think its typing is particularly good for this meta. Mudsdale is actually a really good Pokemon. Though there's not really a great Pokemon like P2 to set Trick Room next to it anymore. And it's like stay on the field for as long as it would really want to. Because typically I would love to play Mudsdale right now. But if you look at the Trick Room users, we don't really have like a Porygon 2. We don't have really like a Dusclops either that can just sustain forever. So your best options just end up being Pokemon like Bronzong that are like kind of solid and can kind of act as this little Trick Room core in a sense. But like it's a bit harder to have a semi-room core with Bronzong than it was to like P2. And I think that's something that really like kind of hinders its usefulness and its effectiveness. And this is the Lurantis. See this quick contrary super power. It doesn't get superpower anymore. Not worth mentioning. Well, I didn't even know that. Wow, okay. But yeah, Salazzle. Salazzle's actually like a decent Pokemon. Mainly because of this, it's very fast, 117. If you look at most of the meta, you would have to be like Kilowattrel, Weavile levels to outspeed it. So you're really going to outspeed basically all the known Pokemon in the metagame. You're outspeed like Meowscarada, you're going to outspeed Maushold. Poison Fire is actually like a pretty good offensive typing in this metagame. So we're going to just instantly put it into like good but weird. It is a pretty solid Pokemon. Serena, Queenly Majesty. Unfortunately, it does like hard mess with Dragonite strats, but Dragonite teams tend to have a good way to OHKO it. So it's like kind of weird. There's better ways to stop priority, and I don't feel like running Serena on a slot is like very good, but we'll put it in mid-slash decent anyways. If you really want to block Dragonite and make that team feel horrible, but then it's like decent. There isn't really much fake out Pokemon in the meta either, so Serena gets a little less usefulness off of that. But, you know, it still has like an ability that does something that's like kind of decent. So, you know, we'll put it there. Oranguru. Instruct, Eruption, Damage. Instruct, Eruption, Damage. Instruct, Eruption, Damage. Passimian, horrible. The former niche of Passimian was being like a Defiant Mon. And, I wonder what Pokemon that was just added this generation does everything better than Passimian. Has more attack stat, but then Rage Fit, Scarfer, what? It does have Vital. Yeah, okay. I think that says enough. It's very outclassed. I'll put an outclassed here. This would be extra nice. But yeah, Mimikyu. Mimikyu's a really good Trick Room setup if you have hard Trick Room. Mimikyu's the hardest Trick Room setter to really get through because of the disguise ability and its general decent enough bulk. Puts it in like solid tier. And it's also a Poira fairy type, so it hits Hydreigon. Very cool. Let's go, Mimikyu. Corviknight, great Pokemon. Ironhead, you have Brave Bird, Bulk Up, Roost, you have Iron Defense even, you have Tailwind, so it can act as a counter Tailwind to Murkrow. And this is the thing I was saying about Murkrow as a Pokemon. If your opponent has counter Tailwind and Pokemon that are like this fast enough, like let's say you're running Corviknight with your own Garchomp, right? And the Corviknight that switches Tailwind, even though the Corviknight is not faster than the opponent's team, you still just have a Garchomp, and that will be faster than the Pokemon they put in under Tailwind like Golden Go, and that'll make it a little bit better in general. Floatzel has Swift Swim, but not really great. Palafin exists now, physical water type, 160 stab. I think that's just better for rain. Dreadnought, same story. It at least has water rock typing, so it's a little bit different. So I guess I'll put it in actually has a niche tier, but like it's pretty bad. I mean, sure, you get Rock Slide, cool. Colossal, I actually like Colossal more than some of the other gimmicks right now. This is because of like Heat Wave, you surf yourself, and you'd be a bit annoying for like Golden Go. So I'll actually put it in mid but decent. I don't think it's quite good, but you know, it exists. Appletoon, it's kind of a win con Pokemon. Doesn't really do much on the field. Has thick fat. It can kind of just exist and just be mildly annoying and inconvenient. Sandaconda, Sandspit, Leftovers. I believe it's a Iron Defense Body Pressmon, but I don't think it's particularly... Yeah, it's an Iron Defense Body Pressmon, but it's not particularly great at it, and we already have Pokemon like Garganacl too. Like, sure, you can set up Sand with it, but you have 2 other Sandstream Pokemon. Use those, man. Use those. And that's really all I had to say about Sandaconda. Toxtricity, Boomburst, funny. Boomburst, funny. But I'll put it there. Actually, I'll put it in that tier. We'll put it with all the other gimmicks. Barraskewda. Swift Swim. Fast. Speed. Yes. Hatterene. I feel like Hatterene is actually like very outclassed now because of the rise of Armarouge. Though I'll at least put it in has a niche because it's like it's still a fairy type. It still does that. Grimmsnarl. I feel like Grimmsnarl has gotten a lot worse. Golden Go is very annoying for it, and Golden Go has kind of proved itself to be the premier threat right now. Those screens are still like solid enough, or I'll put it in solid tier just because like, okay, it's a viable Pokemon still. You quick reflect light screen. Parting Shot hasn't been too great for it actually. Pincurchin. Pincurchin is not great but has a niche because of electric terrain. Frostmoth is actually like an okay Pokemon because of Quiver Dance as Wide Guard. You can Terra Blast into a water type. That's also pretty good, and you also get like Ice Beam. Decent defensive bulk, so once you Terrasilize, you can actually kind of act as a Golden Go check. So it's like, it's actually like pretty okay. Pretty mid, decent. I could even see it go higher. Spiritomb, I don't really have much to say about that. Stonjourner, don't really have much to say about that. Dugtrio, Indeedee Female. I do think Indeedee Female has like a big asterisk around it, because I don't feel like Trick Room will be a move on it for longer, but I think this is the normal Follow Me, Helping Hand, Psychic set that you run normally is like actually this very good, so... Or this Dazzle, actually. So Indeedee's definitely on the solid tier. Indeedee... Oh wait, did I get the wrong Indeedee? Oh no, I didn't. Indeedee Male, though, lost Ally Switch, so it's outclassed by Indeedee Female in every way, and now Indeedee Female has Trick Room, even though that probably won't last, makes it a fair bit worse. Copperajah is actually an okay Pokemon. Bulky Steel. There's not very many great Trick Room Pokemon, though, to set up for it, so it kind of goes around here. Like, we can look at Copperajah, 130, Sheer Force, and then Mudsdale. Like, that is not bad, and it hurts a lot, actually. Like, this is not a bad Pokemon, I think, but... There's not many great Trick Room setters for it, I also feel like. You can turn it into a Terra Ground type as well. You got Heavy Slam, that's actually kind of useful now. This is the first time Copperajah is actually like a little bit better than normal, because you just put it next to a Trick Room user and that's like a little bit better, but in general, not too great of a Pokemon. Dragapult, I do think Dragapult's actually like very underrated right now. The ability to have like Terra Blast for like banded sets, having this Dragon Dance, Phantom Force, Dragon Darts, its Ghost Dragon typing is actually generally pretty valuable too. So we'll just put in solid. It's a solid Pokemon. It's still a bit weird, well, in some sense. Baxcalibur. Okay, we'll talk about Baxcalibur. Excalibur is actually like a very strong Pokemon and has a lot of damage potential and can take advantage of a fair bit of different sets. But for example, this like Icicle, Crash, Dragon Dance, you have Glaive Rush, which is just a 120 base power move and you can quick protect after it. And if you want, you even have like a move like Ice Shard on this too. You even have like Swords Dance. Like Ice Dragon is generally like a pretty good typing. It's just like it never really had a good Ice Dragon type for the VGC tiers. But now we kind of do, and Ice Shard's like a pretty good move, the ability to like get through a lot of these Pokemon. It's actually like remarkable how this kind of decent this Pokemon is. It's just decent enough. Though it also is weird right now because Golden Go exists. You kind of maybe want to terrestrialize it into fire so it can get better uses off of its ability and stuff like that. Like, it's definitely one of the better Pokemon introduced this generation. For sure, for sure. Altaria, on the other hand, Altaria actually did gain a little bit. Altaria now has, like, Helping Hand. You can have it use Haze. You can have it use Tailwind. And be this kind of, like, bulky Tailwind setter. But it's also this, like, its bulk is not, like, quite... It's just barely not quite enough for it. And, like, weather isn't prominent enough for Altaria to be, like, really great either. So I unfortunately do have to put Altaria in like kind of bad, so it's outclass tiered, unfortunately. Still, Armarouge now, that's a really good Pokemon. We're going to see this Pokemon a lot in this metagame. It has access to Wide Guard, Trick Room, Fire Psychics, and excellent offensive typing, and it also has the ability to run so many different sets on it that it's just like really good. I think it's probably a Pokemon I could even put into very good tier, just because of like this how generally powerful it. Even we saw with like Aaron Trailer, he didn't even like attach it to an Indeedee, which that was the first real showing that Armarouge just doesn't have to be like used how we all think it is. And it also used a different Terra type in Dark, and we also have more Terra types that you can actually use with Armarouge too. Like notably, you still have the Flash Fire plus Grass typing potential, but you also have Flash Fire plus Fighting type potential, so you can kind of turn a matchup with Aura Spear. And that's pretty good. You have access to Ally Switch, so it can be even more supportive if you want. It has access to Wide Guard. Armor Cannon's ridiculously powerful. Expanding Force is just a very powerful move with Indeedee. Like, this Pokemon just has a lot going for it. It has Energy Ball for when you want to turn Grass. Though you don't even have to run Energy Ball when you turn Grass. You can just run a Wide Guard and still be a good Pokemon. But in general, I think it's just a really strong Pokemon and will always have like some presence in this metagame with all the different terrestrial types it can use and all the different ways it can play. Armarouge is definitely one of the premier threats in this metagame, one of the best new Pokemon. Scoville, on the other hand, is very lackluster for a first Grass Fire type. It has horrible stats, horrible move pool. Its exclusive move is just kind of horrible. It does at least have the ability to like proc off of the new items with like Mirror Amp, Herb, but it's just a very gimmicky, weird Pokemon that doesn't quite do enough for you, I think. Like, you would have to run it with like Mirror Herb, but it's like, it's just not fast. It doesn't get Sleep Powder. It quicks Rage Powder, and it kind of just does nothing. And like, again, its exclusive move, you need something to like have Mirror Herb to really take advantage of that, and it's not like even a neutral full-on benefit either. So it's like it's very weird to play. It's Spicy Extract is this very bizarre Pokemon design that I don't fully get. Bombardier, I think Bombardier is actually a Pokemon that's kind of interesting. It does have like Dark Flying Rock coverage. You get Brave Bird, you get Knockoff, you get Rock Slide, as if you were a rock type, even though you aren't one. You can run it with like Indeedee with Psychic Seed. I do think it's worse than Hydreigon, but it's always like a Pokemon that I think is like barely etches the use of playability. It's barely mid-decent tier. Ceruledge, I think Ceruledge is a pretty good Pokemon. It has very excellent bulk, Bitter Blade, can take advantage of items like Clear Amulet in a very cool way. It can also turn Grass like Armarouge. Though unfortunately it kind of relies more on Pokemon like Grimmsnarl and general bulk, that I have to put in like solid tier instead of like very good tier, in my opinion. Honestly, Talonflame could go up to very good tier 2. It's just a good Talon user. So it's a good Talon user, but yeah. Alright, next Pokemon we talk about. Next Pokemon. Oh. Well, Baked Body, the little doggo. We did see Gahaku's team where he like self-procced with Lava Plume. I think that was a cute gimmick. I don't think this Pokemon's very good though. Immunity to Fire is cool though. Dondozo. We'll put Dondozo all the way up. It is getting counterpicked more, so I won't put it like too far up. But it actually falls under solid tier. It's like the borderline of solid tier to good but weird. Good but weird seems like the most apt and anecdotal way to put it, because theoretically if someone had like multiple fake out users, you could infinitely fake out rotate on Dondozo and you could counter it that way. But most teams aren't running much fake out, so it's kind of a mute point. And like Dondozo always has a way to get like countered. If Haze just happens to be on the opposing team, then it's horrible to play with it that way. But because it's just like viable enough, it's like it kind of encapsulates good but weird tier, but I think in actuality it's probably in solid. But for the sake of like the name nomenclature of the team, I'll actually put it in good but weird. I think that's like an apt way to put it, but you know, it'll be in solid. It'll actually be in solid. Bruxus. Farigiraf. Farigiraf is actually a very good Pokemon. You know, Trick Room, you got Dazzle. It can play pretty offensive too. Like, I think this is a good in-between Pokemon. Is actually like pretty solid and underrated for Trick Room cores to run this Pokemon. And I think it's something that could pop up a fair bit more as we get on. I think even Murkrow teams have some use for Farigiraf, and I think more offense has use of Farigiraf too, because Farigiraf is actually a very solid offensive Pokemon in a lot of respects and has access to like Dazzle, Hyper Voice, Psychic. Like, this is a Pokemon I actually believe in a fair bit because of this armor tail and its general bulk. This really acts as like even a decent, for fast teams, it's a decent Pokemon because it can set Trick Room and all that. So I think it's actually in the solid tier, but it's good but weird is probably the better anecdotal spot for it. But you know, it's very solid. It's very solid. I do think we actually saw a Farigiraf team that used it here. Yeah, we saw Hobbit use Farigiraf as for another mode on a like kind of hyper offense. He has Tail and Haze, but he also has like Farigiraf to fall back on because Golden Go is not like the fastest Pokemon in the world, so it can take advantage of this Trick Room mode for it as well. I think Farigiraf kind of deserves to be in the solid tier, just barely. Gardevoir, we actually had a video on Gardevoir. I do think Gardevoir is a solid Pokemon. Psychic Fairy, decent stats, very overall solid, you know. Not too bad at all, not too bad at all. Though it does quantify good but weird because like it's still weak to priority, it still gets hurt a lot, it can die very quickly, but it can also do this enough to break a lot of top tier threats that it's really up there as a Pokemon for sure in my opinion. Gengar, fast ghost, very solid. Kind of underrated. You can go like Terra Flying. It actually did win a tournament this weekend as well. Ghost types in general, as I talked about with Miss Magius, ghost types are like a lot better now in general. So I think solid is a good place to put it. Glaceon's actually like decently strong thanks to Hail. The rework to Hail in the snow, and you get the defense boost, you get specs. Like, it does a lot of decent damage. It probably is like borderline mid-west decent because it does damage, it hurts, it's annoying. Greavard has last respects, but I think the actual way you want to play Greavard is very different to that. Because in VGC you're not really getting exactly enough Pokemon to die, right? You kind of want to run Houndstone in like a very different way to how you would expect. You want to run it with like last respects, Willow, Snarl, and kind of play this bulky game to set up your Tyranitar for a situation it can kind of win thanks to your support. And I think that's how you want to play Houndstone right now, and not really taking advantage of last respects necessarily, but having last respects as like a backup win strat. Because instead of like how normal these support Pokemon play and not having the ability to do damage, Houndstone actually has the ability to do a lot of damage for an endgame scenario, and I think that's a good way to take advantage of it to be viable at like all stages of the game. Because like one of the main problems with Houndstone, it kind of incentivizes Tyranitar to be in the back as well, but since this is a 4v4 metagame, that becomes a lot harder to do. So you kind of want to have Willow, you want to have Snarl, you want to have these supportive options so Houndstone can actually come out in the early game and play it out like that. Tyranitar is solid. I think I need to explain. Sand's pretty good. Strong Pokemon, does this enough. Low Kicks, on the other hand, Tinted Lens, you know, ooh. if Tinted Lens did more damage, if this Pokemon had more stats, if this had better offense, you know, it's only a 102. If it had like adaptability, it's pretty not worth mentioning. Mabo sniffed, Mr. Sniffers. Intimidate. I don't think this Pokemon really has anything though. Comeuppance. It has counter. I do think Comeuppance is actually like very cute. It plays a very interesting playstyle because it wants to get hit first, very bulky, decent stat lines. Like it's okay. It's probably like I'll just add it to like the more gimmicky side of things. But it's definitely a Pokemon that at least like does something. Niche, but not great. Intimidate's also a lot worse now, so you know it's getting a bit hurt from that. Mousehold actually goes up here a fair bit. Population Bomb plus Wide Lens is insane. Very fast Pokemon. Has actually insanely good support moves. It's one of the only Follow Me users in the tier. Has access to Friend Guard potentially. Like Solid is just a perfect place for Mousehold. Kilowattrel. This is a Pokemon I'm actually very high on. It has two great abilities. Wind Power can charge it for the next turn for Thunderbolt damage, but the better ability being competitive, where if anyone even dares to bring an Intimidate user for your Garchomp, guess what? You just get boost, you get stronger, you become better, you become faster. And it's one of the best electric Pokemon in the tier, and it also has access to Tailwind too. It is a very solid Pokemon in my opinion. And you can also play more defensive with like Eerie Impulse, Feather Dance, and all that. Metacham, I don't think it's a great Pokemon. I'll just leave it here. Annihilate, you have two sets, really. You have Final Gambit, and you have like Bulk Up, Safety Goggles. And we saw both sets actually do really well. And we'll continue to see both sets do like really well as well. Because like there's two ways to play Annihilate. One, you run it with like Grimmsnarl and a lot of bulk. And you play this kind of like defensive set. You go Bulk Up, you go Rage Fist, go like Drain Punch. And this really becomes very hard to actually take down this Pokemon. And that's like a set that's like very scary, as Rage Fist stacks forever really. And then you also have the best Final Gambit user ever made. Even though I don't think Final Gambit is necessarily like a great strat. Being the best ever at something is never bad, but I think Bulk Up will generally be the better strat for tournaments, and this playing for bulky Rage Fist plus Grim and all that can really just turn a game if people try to KO it and break the Final Gambit. So yeah, Annihilate's very good. Arboliva is a very weird Pokemon. It has Seed Sower to set grassy terrain. Very bulky. It's just, I feel like it's probably, it's a very weird Pokemon. It's hard to really quantify how this Pokemon is good, because like it has Harvest. It can technically like infinite citrus berries. Go like Energy Ball, you go Hyper Voice. Decent offensive stats too. It's a good Hyper Voice quicker. Seed Sower to begin grassy terrain to become a bit stronger. Has Pollen Puff. So it has a lot of sustain really. Like there's not really bad things about it. Like Strength Stab, it just feels, it's hard for me to place it because this always feels like it has a lot of tools, but I don't know if it necessarily does enough with those tools to really become viable and really like pop off in any sense. And that's something I always will have a bit of a problem with it. Brambleghast has Wind Power. Wind Power is like kind of cute. You get a +1 on Tailwind. So in like Murkrow setter, if 2 Murkrows just set Tailwind turn 1, you become +2. And that's a decent niche. It's still like a very frail Pokemon, not great stats, so I'll just put it there. The Dunsparce. The Dunsparce is actually an interesting Pokemon. You use Coil, and you can actually bypass Protect. Like, I think Dunsparce is actually a Pokemon that can just like win a game, thanks to his access to Coil, Leftovers, decent enough stats. And theoretically, if you let a Dunsparce stay in on a game forever, then it's only just going to become stronger and stronger and stronger. And eventually, it's just going to just blow through stuff, thanks to his new move, Hyper Drill. And Hyper Drill is base 100 power, accuracy. So yeah, if this stays on the field for too long, it will just win a game. So, you know. Veluza is the most disappointing Pokemon this generation. Even though it goes at like hyper speed, to try to kill you when in water in game. This is very slow for some reason. Garganacl is a very hard Pokemon to deal with. It's one of the better Pokemon in this meta because it has like Wide Guard and all that. It has Salt Cure. It can stall out most Pokemon. The best body press Iron Defense user in the tier. But then again, Golden Go and stuff and Haze has become more popular as well. I feel like it kind of encapsulates like good but weird as well, but I'll probably just put in solid because of access to Wide Guard and decent supporting tools while we're at it. Golden Go has really been the premier threat this first week, as like Nasty Plot plus Make It Rain, you have Choice Specs plus Murkrow, and you use Haze to facilitate it even more. Generally a solid Pokemon, so it'll go up at the very top of very good. It's not GOAT tier in my opinion yet though, but it's like borderline GOAT tier with how powerful it's shown to be. Glimmora is a Pokemon I actually like quite a bit. With Power Gem, Sludge Bomb, Earth Power, it has access to Dazzling Gleam. Like, Glimmora is one of the better Pokemon in the format, though it's in a weird place because Golden Go is also very popular. I feel like this is like the premier way to play Glimmora is just going like Assault Vest. And then you go like Power Gem, Sludge Bomb, and you kind of this Energy Ball too. Like these stuff, this has a very great move pool. You even go Dazzling Gleam if you want for Hydreigon. You can go Earth Power for Golden Go. Like this Pokemon, this has a lot of great assets. Toxic to Breathe, while not the most insane ability, any bit of extra free chip is like kind of nice. Even if Doubles doesn't technically use Toxic Spikes generally, it ends up becoming pretty strong. It has good synergy with Murkrow too. Good synergy with a lot of these Tailwind Pokemon. Like it's a very decent Pokemon in its own right. Kingambit can become a win con for a lot of teams. You play it with either defensive screens or you can use it as a win con for like Trick Room and late game with Sucker Punch and like Terra Blast. It's a bit weird to play because Steel Dark is like a tough typing, so I will put it in good but weird tier, but it's definitely a solid Pokemon in its own right. Meowscarada is a Pokemon I actually like quite a bit. Flower Trick, you have Fake Tears, you have Toxic Spikes, Ally Switch, you have Trick Room. Well, you don't have Ally Switch, but you have like this is an insane supportive move pool, and it's very, very solid at what it does. The best offensive grass type in the tier. Though Protean's not my favorite set. Oh yeah, it does have Ally Switch actually, I forgot. So I was right, I was right. And you can run like this, and it's pretty good. You can run it with Trick Room, give it Fake Tears. I think a lot of what makes Meowscarada viable is this is absurdly good supporting moveset that it has for like no reason. And like there's so many like random things you can deal with it that are all like pretty crazy. So like it's definitely like encapsulates kind of the good but weird identity. Earthworm. Shed Tail's a very good move. I feel like Iron Defense Body Press plus Shed Tail makes you pretty vulnerable to ghost types. And also if you click Shed Tail, then your ability to play Iron Defense Body Press in late game is a lot worse. So I'll put it in like has a niche, but not great tier. Technically, Shed Tail plus a strong enough Pokemon can take over a game, but probably not as much as you want. Heracross, unfortunately, rather bad plus Outclass, but I will put it up there instead of like not worth mentioning because it's still a fighting type. Cloth is unfortunate. It doesn't get Shell Smash. It's +1/+1/+1 is not as useful, and it doesn't have quite enough stats to really like play the game as much as you would want it to. So this goes there. Raichu is one of the fastest fake out Pokemon in the format. So it instantly goes up a fair bit to good but weird. Because like fake out you have Lightning Rod, but now you have Palma competing with you, and that's like pretty rough. Hariyama is fake out, Wide Guard, Close Combat, Knockoff. One of the premier Pokemon to have on like hard TR. And will always be a great Pokemon for hard Trick Room to run. It honestly probably borderline solid, but I'll actually put it in good but weird tier, even though it's not necessarily a weird Pokemon. This is good with Trick Room and very solid in general. Glalie, not really worth mentioning. Luxray, not worth mentioning. Wigglytuff, it's a fairy type. Fairy type, be better. Competitive, okay. Driftblow, fast Tailwinds, but there's not really a great terrain setter. There's only really Indeedee for it. I would prefer to be with like a Tapu Lele, but there's no like Tapu Lele, so I'll just put in Outclass for now. Bronzong is actually a very good Trick Room setter. It has Iron Defense, Body Press, can really take over games in like a variety of ways. It takes good advantage of Terrestrialization, is one of the premier Trick Room setters for like Semi-Room as well. I think Bronzong goes to solid or this like good but weird, but I think it's just such a good Trick Room setter that I'm going to put it here. I might even move Mimikyu down to good but weird. It's also a great Trick Room setter though. I feel like a lot of how you set Trick Room in this meta though is from like faster Pokemon that this happen to warn Trick Room, like Gengar or even Meowscarada. Yeah, next is Abomasnow. I think Abomasnow is actually very good. The snow rework was very great for it, and I think that actually puts it up a lot. Ice Grass is a very good typing in current meta. Like, if you get Abomasnow into Trick Room against, like, the Golden Go Hydreigon Murkrow team and use it with another Trick Room setter with, like, say, Armorogue, and then you actually become, like, very powerful. I feel like Weavile is more viable than people get it credit for. Ice Shard, Dark typing. Great partner to Pokemon like Dragonite if you don't... Similar to how, like, Chien-Pao was, because you can also use it with, like, Ice Spinner. So I actually think it's probably like good but weird. It's a decent Pokemon. Magnezone, Thunderbolt Flash Cannon, decent electric type, slow. It also can act as an Air Defense body press user. Can trap Golden Go, and that's like kind of cool. But other than that, it's like not the best. Probably mid but decent. Persian, Fake Out. It's okay, I guess. Cool. Golduck. One of the better Swift-Swim Pokemon in the format, but I feel like Golduck, when you play Golduck, it always feels like it just doesn't do enough damage, and losing, like, Scald as a consistent way to really do anything makes it a bit worse but at least being a special Pokemon kind of puts it a bit better. Arcanine is one of the weirder Pokemon in this metagame, but losing out against, like, Clear Amulet Pokemon, Clear Amulet Garchomp being real kind of makes it a bit worse. But it's still, like, solid. It's not bad. You have, like, offensive utility for it, too. Like, I think putting it with Tauros is, like, kind of where it belongs. Both Tauros forms are, like, solid Pokemon as well. Slowbro is another decent Trick Room setter. It's an Iron Defense body press user. Kind of similar to Bronzong, but I feel like it's slightly around where Bronzong is. So I'll put it, like, good but weird. Decent Trick Room setter, though. Can become a Wink on its own. Muck. Let's just put Muck here. Funny gimmick though. Palafin is actually a Pokemon I enjoy quite a bit in this game, because it's flip turn, you switch it out, it instantly becomes like 160. Jet Punch is insanely powerful. Wave Crash does a lot of damage. Decent coverage in CC. I actually feel like it's solid. Even like probably like very good. It's very close to like very good as well. Also, these aren't ordered or anything. But Palmut is very strong as well. You have Fake Out, CC, Double Shock, and Revival's Blessing. But then again, I haven't seen anyone really use Palmut's Revival Blessing to like his best kind of standard. So I kind of feel like this putting in good but weird, just to be cautious about it, feels like generally right. Spite Up sucks. So Titan's a very good Pokemon with Hail because of this Ice type. You get Slush Rush. It can turn into a Water type too with Liquidation. Very good coverage. I will put it in like good but weird as well. There's another decent setter. I feel like this running Abomasnow on its one sum is a bit better. That's because of like Aura Veil. But Titan deserves to be like somewhat mentioned as well. Cyclizar, very fast Shed Tail. I feel like it's actually being fast with Shed Tail is actually like worse. So I'm actually going to put it pretty low. Because, like, there's two Pokemon doubles, so if you Shed Tail and you're fast at it, you're just going to have your new sub get broken so fast. So having Regenerator so you technically lose less HP isn't necessarily great. Toedscruel is, like, actually a very good offensive Pokemon with Grass Ground, and Rage Powder, you have access to Trick Room on it too. But, yet again, it's just... Basilian Might can be, like, antithetical to how it wants to play, and that's a bit rough for it. Wugtrio doesn't really deserve anything. Water Tauros is probably the better Tauros in general, but it's also this like really good. You got Aqua Jet, you got Wave Crash, you have CC. It's just a good Pokemon. Okay, the Steel Poison Reverum has Filter. Spin Out lowers your speed. You can use it with Shift Gear to set up a bit. You have Gunk Shot as well. It's okay. It's an okay Pokemon. I don't think it's like great for this meta because there's like Garchomp around. There's Golden Go's the premier threat currently. There aren't many fairy types. I actually think this is a Pokemon that gets better when Ruin Legendaries are added and Paradox mods. I think it's a really good Pokemon into Flutter Mane. Quaxquavel Water Fighting is actually a Pokemon I will put fairly highly, surprisingly. because of its ability to become faster, if you put it next to like a Murkrow in Tailwind, it actually becomes like fairly strong with water fighting typing and Clear Amulet to prevent Intimidate boost. I mean Intimidate drops. You can have Ice Spinner on it as well. Like, it's a pretty solid enough Pokemon, so we'll put it there. Skeledirge is a Pokemon I enjoy quite a bit, because Skeledirge is also this like generally very strong, one of the better fire types in the tier right now. Unaware is an insane ability with all the setup going around. Torch Song always gets stronger. You can win con with a fairy typing. You can go grass to be immune to Spore. I do think one notable thing about Skeledirge as well is thanks to its Torch Song and like great stats, you can really just start becoming a win condition in your own right in a way that is pretty unique to unaware Pokemon. Like unaware Pokemon like Quagsire and Clefable don't tend to be able to become win cons too efficiently in doubles, but thanks to that, you're actually able to do a fair bit of work. And also, since Dondozo are starting to only run like Order Up, EQ, Sub, and like completely dropping the Water move or running Terra Blast, going Fairy on Skeledirge actually makes you wall it pretty well. And so that's like a very good defensive typing. You can also still go Grass. Tinkaton is a Pokemon I like quite a bit. I do feel like people play Tinkaton wrong. I feel like in general you want to have like Fake Out, Gigaton Hammer, Helping Hand, like Protect as well. Though it's like, it's probably like good but weird tier. It probably deserves that. And yeah, we already said about Tatsugiri as the last mons. It'll just have Tailwind. You have like Dondozo. Notably, there's a lot of Haze in the meta, so I do think it's a lot worse right now than it used to be. Just like a week ago. Because I think people have acknowledged that it's like a good Pokemon. And like a strat like that inevitably becomes worse because people acknowledge that it's good. So I think that is something that's a bit concerning for it going forward. But yeah, before we go, we'll talk about this Skill Fairy guy. Or little Hammer. This is how I think you should be playing Tinkaton. This is like own tempo, run it bulky, but you use Fake Out, Gigaton Hammer, and then you just have it quick Helping Hand or have it quick Thunder Wave on the non-Gigaton Hammer terms, so it always gets value for your team. And then boom, your Gigaton Hammer is like actually useful. Whoa. Because the alternative with this quicking Helping Hand actually makes it like fairly decent, and you're able to like be pretty flexible in how you play. And I think that's like the general idea of where I would have my tier list as of this today. Though I think maybe we could restructure the top tier a little bit more, but I think this is a good general idea to how I feel like the tier list is. So yeah, I think that's all for today. This was a very long video. A whole hour of me just talking about Pokemon. Kind of wild, kind of wild. But you know, that's every Pokemon in the Scarlet and Violet VGC metagame. And we have ranked all of them. We have ranked all of them. Crazy. Thank you for watching. If you want me to actually do more content like that, we'll do it if so pleased, you know? Yeah, leave a comment on what you think on like the metagame is, what Pokemon you like, what I might be wrong about on this list, though I feel like it's a generally accurate list, I feel. But yeah, that's all for now. Later. Thank you for watching.